this may be mainly for me. I don't know. Sometimes I feel that way, and I find out I'm wrong. And then sometimes I feel that way, and who knows? Maybe I was right. God tends to speak to me in ways that I can hear. Does that make sense? I mean, he's smart enough to do that. It's a pretty good idea. Talking to someone in a way they can't hear, it isn't very effective. And that's why I sometimes worry, because a lot of my illustrations and things some people may not be able to relate to, or at least not relate to on a level that really has the same impact it would with me, because what really, moves me or impacts me or that I can relate to, you may not be able to, and vice versa. Somebody could talk about what it's like to ride a really nice Harley down the highway at 7, I can get that. But my wife and my father would much rather talk about riding a horseful gallop through a field. Okay, they can get that. So there's just different things, but I don't know. Sometimes you can't judge what somebody can relate to and what they can't. So Jesus used a lot of parables that, we learn to relate to, because we can't. But I was thinking about some things this morning. Leah and I were watching a show last night. It's not real big deal what it was, but there was a scene where one of the characters in this was awaiting trial for shooting someone, and a deal came up. Evidently he had inherited some property and somebody wanted to buy it, and he wanted to, well, hey, if you're going to utilize this, you need a partner. And the guy's like, oh, no. I don't partner with somebody on the inside, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's a drawn out thing. But the gist of it was, this opportunity came up. This man wanted to take advantage of it. And he went to one of his buddies, and with promises of taking care of his family and this, that, and the other, convinced the guy who was sitting waiting for trial for a much lesser charge. Basically, they described it as having 1 foot out the door. He was basically going to get off. Convinced him to plead guilty, to confess to his own crime so that he could get out and make this better life for himself. And I'm sitting there watching this and probably keeping Leah from hearing the dialogue, because I'm going, you're an idiot. You're a sucker. Don't you dare do that. You moron. You get whatever you deserve if you say yes to that. Because there's only a handful of people in the world that I would even think about going to prison for. And, none of them are my friends, okay? I mean, there's some relation there. There's some, sorry, I might die for you, but I'm not going back to prison for you. Unless God really told me to. Okay, I'll submit. But the point is, going to prison for somebody else who's more guilty than you, just so that they can have a better life than you, is stupid. And I wouldn't do it. And then I was thinking, that's what God did. See, we sometimes think, God was the governor. He's the ruler. He's the judge who's sitting back and pardoning us. Like your governor writes out a pardon and you're forgiven. And there's some element to that. But no. He walked into the courtroom and said, this guilt is on me. I'll take it. So that the person who really committed the crime can have a better life. Can have life at all. And it's not just that, he went and did a few years and got out. He did that for us while we were on death row. He took our execution. Okay. Think about the few people on this planet that I would go back to prison for and then change that to death row, and that number might shrink a little bit more. Ooh. I'll die. I'll die. My guilt. So that they have the opportunity, not even a guarantee, because we still might say no, but the opportunity to have life. What would somebody have to do? When I think of that question, one more movie, old one, maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't, Saving Private Ryan. I'm going to spoil it if you haven't seen it. This movie takes place at D-Day, and it turns out that there's this poor woman who has 3 sons in the war, and 2 of them are killed on the same day. And so the powers that be in the military say, we've got to find that 3rd kid and get him out of there so that she doesn't lose all 3 of her sons to this war. And so they pick a team of men to scour the countryside in enemy territory to find this one tiny soldier in the midst of all these other soldiers that have been scattered all over the place, because D-Day was a victory, but it was not well executed. Okay, there was a lot of mess ups, and they were pretty accurate with that. And find this guy and get him home. And if you haven't seen it yet, prepare for be spoiled. They have all these adventures and mishaps and this, that, and the other getting to him. They finally get him, and there's this critical moment, this one bridge that has to be protected so that the Allies can have victory and all of this, and he refuses to leave without taking care of this situation because he's not going to neglect his duty. Okay, which already puts him a step above most of us. Okay, the character. Because I'd have been like, oh, ticket out of here. Praise God. Because they all thought they were going to die. So they defend this bridge, and pretty much everybody that came to get him is getting killed. And the captain who was in charge is laying there at the end, and he's bleeding, and he's dying. And the man he came to save is sitting there next to him, and he looks up at him, and he goes, earn this. I can relate to that because that's how we think and that's how we feel, and it ignores a few things. Number one, they weren't saving him for him. It wasn't about whether he deserved it or not. They were saving him for his mother. Right? That was the whole point. So she wouldn't lose 3 sons. So it had nothing to do with whether he was a good person or not. It had everything to do with her. Second, he was as good as they were, if not better. Every one of them were like, forget this. We've got, we get you. We get out of here. Leave the bridge alone. Let somebody else deal with that. And he's like, no, I'm not going to neglect my duty. So he was a better soldier than they were. So he kind of deserved it. They showed him at the end of his life, looking at all these graves that died on D-Day and asking his wife, tell me I'm a good man. Because he wanted to feel like he earned it. And that can be us. We can stick ourselves in that spot. Every one of us has fallen short. Every one of us has blown it. None of us are perfect. And when we stand before the judge on our merits, we are guilty. If you don't realize that, there's nothing I can say to you. But if you realize that, I am guilty before God on my merits. God himself wrapped himself in flesh, walked into the prison of your life and my life, and took the keys of sin and death and judgment. And he unlocked that door and let us out. Not to cheat death, not to cheat justice. He took our place to pay the price so that justice is satisfied, so that righteousness remains. Nobody's getting away with nothing. Every sin is paid for. And he did it out of love for his enemies. Would you do it for your friend? Would you do it for someone you loved? What about the person who hurt the person you loved? What about the person who hurt you? What if they're on death row because they wronged you? That's what he did. We wronged him, and he stepped in and took it for us. And then he turned around as he was dying, and he said, earn this. Nope. He didn't. I forgot. Wrong movie. He said, it is done. It doesn't matter if you earn it or not, which is good because you can't. It doesn't matter if you stumble a few times on your way out of the prison. If you're so used to it and institutionalized that you still have to do some of the things that you did in prison for a little while to kind of make the adjustment as he changes your heart and changes your mind. He didn't say earn it. He didn't say deserve it. He said it's yours. It is done. It is complete. It is finished. The debt is paid. You are free. Period. He did it for his enemies. That's me. That's you. While we were yet sinners, while we were still actively hurting him, while we were still breaking his heart, Christ died so that we could have life that was better, a life that was real, a life that wouldn't end, so that we could have victory, so that our chains could be broken, and the captives set free, broken hearts healed. That's what he did. That's pretty amazing.